this prison, it was built 1963 and completed 1964. It was built by prisoners themselves, that is political prisoners and common law prisoners. And during those years, prisoners were housed in the old prison, which was situated on the northern part of this island, which is this side. And they were expected to try their cells while the floor was still wet. And during those years, black prisoners were given only short pants, no underwears, no socks, no shoes. But we'll talk about that later on. We are now here in the main entrance of this prison, as newcomers coming from Marie Harbour being checked to escorted by white warders. This door was always locked for 24 hours, just like this. Yeah, one of the warders will knock here like this, and the one inside will give to this hole to check who's knocking before he opens up this door and allow the newcomers to come in. But we are not newcomers, we are visitors. We go straight to the leadership section, that is B section. I won't talk about this in the passage because they are written on the course. Let us proceed. In these photos, our former president, Dr. Nelson Mandela, with the late Walter Sisulu. The late Walter Sisulu was the Secretary General of the African National Congress. Here in this photo is the first work that was done right here in this section. Captions was right here. This photo was taken from the census office by visitors from the International Committee of the Red Cross. But the known ones like Mandela, the late Walter Sisulu, they were taken out from this group and were given old clothes to men to give the impression that they were not involved in the hard labor. But they were not aware what was happening in that office. But later on, they were said to work at the land guard. They were told that they'll work there for 6 months, but that 6 months turned to be 13 years. Here in this photo is before they've built this high wall. This high wall was built in 1978. While they were digging the foundation of this wall, the manuscript of our former president, Dr. Nelson Mandela, that long walk to freedom, that copy was found next to those vine trees in there. That was his garden. That is why he was punished. He was not allowed to study for 4 years. Him, Katrada, and the late Walter Sisulu. Was Katrada and the late Walter Sisulu. They were helping him to write that copy. But the main part of that copy was already outside. Smuggled out by Maharaj when he was president, in 1976. That is why today we've got that long walk to freedom. After this high wall was built, then this became B section, known as leadership section. That one A section. A section was for newcomers, and that other one became C section. C section was used for punishment. But communication was always there between the leadership and the newcomers. As you see the tennis court here, if they hear some voices that side, they play tennis here. And one Connie cell and write some messages and cut one of the tennis ball and put messages in that ball. That ball with messages, they'll serve it over that high wall. And that side will pick up that ball and read those messages. Those messages will direct to next to the call for the drainage hole. That drainage hole was used as a means of communication. That is why they managed to recruit from this section. Here in this photo are the few who were here in this section. They came here as a reference group that is here 2000. And to infect all these sections, as A and C, we've got photos like this one. And from now we go in and see the cells. We've got the fourth one. They don't have numbers now, but it was number 7 because this side it was odd numbers, the opposite even numbers. Yeah, it is where our former president, Dr. Nelson Mandela, spent his 18 years while he was here in this prison. That is from 1964 to 1982. Was 1982, he was transferred to Portsmouth prison and later to Vitafesta prison, where he was since 1990, February. And that cell represented the period before 1977. because before 1977, prisoners were sleeping on the floor. They were given 2 mats and 4 blankets. Let's go in. It's the 4th one on the right. Because he's the one who came with the idea. He was a mathematician. He used natural eyes to take measurements while the one working the late Jeff Masibula, and he made that master key. But we're not looking for the key, we're looking for the radio. One prisoner smuggled in the radio, and prison authorities decided to conduct a strip search, and they found the key in Isaac's cell, and he was given 3 years for the key. Initially he was serving 12 years, but he found himself spending 15 years in this prison. Let us visit Recreation Hall. Yeah, this block was also built in 1978 when they built the high walls around the prison. And this became Recreation Hall, dining hall, showers and toilets. But in these 2 sections, A and B, toilets were used only during the day. That is from 7 o'clock in the morning to 3:30 in the afternoon. From 3:30 when they lock you in, you've got to use a bucket as a toilet. And when the water opens up, you said at 7 o'clock in the morning, the first thing you do is to take your bucket to run to the toilet. You clean your bucket to take your bucket outside. The late Governor Mbeki, that is the father of our former President Thabo Mbeki, ran with that bucket for more than 22 years because he was never transferred to any prison. He was here until he was released in the late 80s. And here it was not only South Africans. We had also people from Namibia, SWAPO members, like Toivo. Toivo is one of the leaders of SWAPO. He was in this section. And we've got one of the communal section, T section, was known as SWAPO section. Female political prisoners were not held in this prison, were in constant prison. Like white political prisoners were in Pretoria Central Prison. For instance, Dennis Goldberg was serving his life sentence in Pretoria Central Prison. He was joined 2 years later in 1966 by the late Bram Fischer. The late Bram Fischer was also serving life sentence. But the late Bram Fischer was released in 1975 after he developed bone cancer. But he was not a free man. He was under house arrest in Bloemfontein in his brother's house because he was half paralyzed, and he died a few months later. His body was cremated, but security police demanded his ashes. That makes him still a prisoner up to now. And a year in this prison, before 1977, prisoners were not treated the same. As I've said, blacks were given only short pants, no underwears, no socks, no shoes. While those were classified as coloreds or Asiatis were given long pants, underwear, socks, and shoes. Diet-wise, it was the very same situation. Here we've got prison diet scale. Yeah, this is a prison diet scale. As you see, the site is written B, says coloreds, Asiatis. We don't have A because whites are not in this prison. C, Bantus, referring to us, because here in South Africa, initially we were called natives, from natives to Bantus, under Bantu Administration Board, studying Bantu education, which was the lowest in this country. As you see, the amount is not the same. When it's breakfast, it will be meal for all. That is soft porridge. Lunch, it will be bread. For coloreds and Asiatis, Puzamandla. For blacks, it's a powder, you mix it with cold water. It tastes sour. Fat, it will be 1 ounce for coloreds and Asiatis, ½ ounce for blacks. Meat, it will be 6 ounces for coloreds and Asiatis, 5 ounces for blacks. Sugar, it will be 2 ounces for coloreds and Asiatis, 1½ ounce for blacks. Supper will be bread for colors and Asians, meal for blacks. That means blacks were never given bread until 1977. And Mandela was arrested in 1962, because he was serving 5 years before he was sentenced to life. That is from 1962 to early 1977. He was never given bread. And those who were in charge of apartheid, they were claiming that they are Christians. In Christian, when you pray, you say, give us this day our daily bread. But you can't give others the bread you are praying for daily. And that is hard to understand. But that never affected them. They always won until now. There's still one. Was this where the tactics were used by apartheid regime to divide and rule. Yeah, this is a prison identity card. That means wherever you go around this prison, you've got to carry it with you. That is of the late P9. As you see, crime, sabotage, sentenced to 20 years. Date of sentence 28 February 1964. And date of discharge 27 February 1984. 20 years full. Because here in South Africa, with political business, there was no remission, no parole. But he was not called Pirima, he was called 69/64. That was his prison identity. Like the prison identity of our former president, Dr. Nelson Mandela, was 466/64. He was not called Nelson or Mandela. That means this man came before him in this prison because he's the prisoner 69 in 1964, while Mandela is a prisoner 466 in 1964, because each and every year they start from one. And the year from 1978, prisoners were classified by groups. As you see, they stretch B to N. You've got 4 spaces. That means you've got to start from D as a newcomer. You'll be in A section. You are promoted to C, you'll be in E section. If you are a leader, you'll be taken to B section. You are promoted to B, you'll be in F section. You are promoted to A, you'll be in G section. As an A group, you can write 3 letters per month, receiving 3 letters per month and 3 visitors per month, and your visit will be 45 minutes. While the other groups can write only 1 letter per month, receiving 1 letter per month and 1 visit per month, and their visit will be 30 minutes. A groups were allowed to buy sweets, while the other groups were not allowed to buy sweets. That means if you're in group A, you're in the privileged group. And here in this prison is not only single cells, but also communal cells. We've got 4 communal sections, that is D, E, F, and G, and from now we visit one, that is F section. We are going back this way. Yeah, okay, it's another type of cell we've got in this prison, known as communal cell. Like in B section, also here prisoners were sleeping on the floor, were given those type of beds. 1977, communal sections were given those type of beds, one on top, one on the bottom. But in these communal sections before, political prisoners were mixed with common law prisoners. Because during those years, prison warders were using common law prisoners to torture political prisoners. And only common law prisoner would get non-political prisoner. If you report to the warders that you are sleeping political prisoner, you'll be beaten up heavily. You'll be told that you are lazy to work, because those who decide you're working like a machine at the unfunded quarry. And in that quarry, you've got to work with one pace. You slow your pace, you'll be beaten up with a big head. For them, it was difficult, because during those years, prison warders used to read books about torture, and they practiced that in these communal sections. That is why there are people who died from these communal sections, and their graves were discovered now recently, that they were buried in Stickland and Maitland. But it's difficult to assume their bones were respective families, because it's more than 3 in one grave. those were this side, they were not treated the same as those were in B section. This side, they were not respected at all, because most of them, they were not educated. That is why this side education was compulsory before prisoners were allowed to study. Though it was difficult because with no books, no pens. That is, during the day, they lose their fingers right on the ground. After lockup, they use cement, brown papers as books, others writing with crayons from common law prisoners. And you've got to hide your book during the day, because prison warders used to search their belongings during working hours. If that self-made book is found, you will be punished until they were allowed to study in 1967. As Mandela said, when allowed to study, has turned this prison into our university. But still it was difficult because only your family could send you study fees. No one else, no any organization was allowed to sponsor political prisoners. Hence, those were studying formally were in that other section, G section, until 1977, when Council of Churches were allowed to sponsor political prisoners to further their education while they were still here in this prison. Those who could not register started to register from 1977. And some of those who started with cement brown papers using their fingers right on the ground. When they were released in the 1980s to 1991, they left this place with degrees. That is why I say at least they managed to turn this prison into their university. Example of that is our current president, Jacob Zuma. He came here in this prison with only standard 2, that is 4 years at school. Originally from the rural area in KwaZulu-Natal. Then that side, if you can count the livestock of your parents, that means you don't need education anymore. That is why he found himself ended up in standard 2. It's the product of this university. Yeah, the changes started in 1977 because those who came in 1977 were young ones from school. That is after 1976, youth uprising. Yeah, 1976 I was young, attending school in Orlando West High School, next to Mandela's old house in Soweto, when they introduced Afrikaans as a medium of instruction. And it was difficult for us to cope using that language. And we decided to demonstrate. And the answer was a bullet. My friends were killed. Others were arrested. I was also attacked by the security police. Then I decided to leave the country and join the liberation movement in exile. I joined ANC in Swaziland. From Swaziland I went to Mozambique. Mozambique to Tanzania. Tanzania was sent to GDR, East Germany, for military training. Was then ANC didn't have training camps in Africa. I was doing underground and conspiracy in East Germany. After my training, I was deployed in Swaziland, working underground in Swaziland with those who were underground inside the country. Until I was arrested in Swaziland, 1978. And I was sentenced to 1,200 days or 1,200 emalangeni, their currency fine. The organization paid the fine, but I was detained thereafter. Because the South African government wanted the Swaziland government to deport me to South Africa. Until United Nations intervened, and I was deported to Mozambique. From Mozambique, I went to Angola. Then NCA training camps in Angola. I was instructor of topography for about 3 months. From there I was sent to Soviet Union in Russia for another training. There I was doing MCW, military and combat work. After my training, I was deployed in Botswana, working underground in Botswana, with those who were underground inside the country. But in Botswana, I was doing more than what I was doing in Swaziland, because I used to come in and out of the country for military equipment for those who were underground. That means I've got to draft sketch route using reference point, counting distance, using compass, of course, so that it would be easier for that person to collect his material. Until they raided the house where I was staying in Botswana, 1983, and I was arrested and deported to Zambia. From Zambia, I went to Zimbabwe. 1984, I was ordered to work inside the country underground as a commander. I was working underground from 1984 until I was arrested, 1986, January the 7th. It was on Tuesday, around about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was sentenced to 17 years. But I spent only 5 years because we were all released 1991. That is why I didn't feel that 5 years, because I had already conditioned myself for 17 years. Yeah, the advantage of the communal cell is that since we are not allowed to study during the day, we are only allowed to study after lockup. That means we are studying right at this corner, and if you've got problems with the subject you are studying, you can walk from there to that corner for help, unlike in A section or in B section. Or maybe a busy writing assignment at night, they switch off the lights at 10, you simply go to the toilet and continue writing assignment. Then the toilet light was on for 24 hours, unlike in A section or in B section. And after we released the last group was on the 27th of April 1991. From May 1991 to November 1996, this prison was occupied by common law prisoners. That is why I see the painting right at the back. That was painted by common law prisoners. Because here we're not allowed to paint even a stone. As you see, these electricity plugs inside, they were always outside. Because common law prisoners were allowed to have TVs, while not allowed to have TVs. They used to play us recorded news because our news, they've got to be censored. They used to listen from those two speakers. In January 1997, this place was open to the public, but not to remind people of the oppression we suffered here, but want to celebrate the triumph of human spirit that our struggle represented. Because this will be the last part of our prison. Since we'll be walking to the harbor, but it's not far. On the way down, we've got penguins, and those penguins are giving us problems. For some of our visitors, they missed their boat back to Cape Town because of those penguins. Please avoid that situation. Make sure that we don't miss the boat. And in closing, I'd like to say on behalf of Robben Island, thank you for visiting us. And to those who are from outside South Africa, please be our ambassadors that side. To South Africans, let us work for peace, friendship and reconciliation, and heal the scars left by the past conflicts. And let us build common destiny together. And please pass this message to your family, to your friends, so that this must not be a one-sided issue. And lastly, have a safe journey and enjoy your stay in Cape Town. Thank you very much.